The most important weapon, look at this photo. It's not a tank, it's not a general, it's a 2400L utility truck. And according to the very men who fought against it, this was the single most important weapon of the Second World War. More than the B-7, more than the Sherman. When Hitler's best mechanics captured their first Willys Jeep in North Africa, they tore it apart. And what they found terrified them. It wasn't a secret weapon, it was a secret philosophy. And it proved Germany had already lost the war before a single American soldier had even landed in Normandy. November 1942, the German mechanics find the Jeep War in North Africa hangs on a knife's edge. The German Afrika Korps and the British 8th Army are locked in a brutal contest of supply lines. Here in the dust and heat, machines are life. A broken-down vehicle is a death warrant near a destroyed British supply column. A German reconnaissance unit finds it. Asmal angular olive drab American vehicle abandoned. The placard on the dash reads Willys MB. The Americans, they learn, call it a Jeep. The unit's commanding officer, intrigued by the strange machine, gives a simple order. Get our best mechanic. I want to know if we can use this thing. That mechanic, an Oberfeld W. Bell or senior NCO, is a man steeped in the German way of war. He's a craftsman. He understands precision. He services the Wehrmacht's primary light vehicle, the Volkswagen Type 82 Kubalwagen. Designed by the legendary Ferdinand Porsche, the Kubalwagen is a piece of brilliant lightweight engineering. It's air-cooled, sparing it the vulnerability of a radiator in combat. It has sophisticated torsion bar suspension. It is in many ways a perfect desert vehicle. Its one critical flaw, it is rear-wheel drive. The mechanic approaches the American machine. He, the Jeep's simple secret, expects crude. He expects inefficiency. He expects a product from a nation of gangsters and jazz musicians, note engineers. He opens the hood. He stops. The master mechanic, a man trained to service the complex precision-built engines of the rich, isn't looking at a mess. He's looking at order. The engine compartment is immaculate, logical. Everything is accessible. Wires are color-coded. Components are clearly labeled. He sees spark plugs he can reach without a specialized angled wrench. He sees a distributor he can service in minutes, not an hour. This isn't just an engine. It's a statement. It was designed by someone who understood that this vehicle would be serviced not in a clean Berlin garage, but in a muddy ditch under fire by a 19-year-old with 6 weeks of training. This is the first shock. He slides underneath. He's looking for the drivetrain, and he finds a second lever next to the gear shift. He traces its linkage. It connects to a small, robust transfer case. This case sends power to the front wheels. 4-wheel drive. With own simple lever, any driver could engage all 4 wheels and power through sand or mud that would leave the Kubalwagen spinning uselessly. The Germans had 4-wheel drive vehicles, but they were heavy, expensive, and complex. This was simple. This was standard. Then he looks at the frame. German engineering prize of lightness, efficiency. The Kubalwagen weighed just over 1,500 lb. This Jeep, it's heavy. It feels overbuilt. The frame is thick. The leaf spring suspension is crude compared to Porsche's torsion bars. But the mechanic instantly sees the truth. You could fix the suspension with a hammer and a block of steel. The German system required specialized tools and training. The Americans hadn't made a mistake by making it heavy. It was intentional. They had built a vehicle expecting it to be misused, overloaded, and driven by maniacs. They had engineered it to survive abuse. The engine itself, the Go Devil, is not impressive by German standards. 134C and 60 horsepower. But production defeats. Perfection as the mechanics tear it down. They discover the real secret. The tolerance is serre loose. The components are simple. It's an engine designed not to be perfect, but to be producible by the millions. This is the second shock. This isn't crude engineering. This is a different engineering. A German supply officer, a man who had worked in automotive plants before the war, inspects the vehicle and delivers a blunt assessment. We are building trophies, he might have said. The Americans are building hammers, and in a total war, you don't win with trophies, you win with hammers. The unit's report is sent up the chain of command. It eyes one of thousands flooding into Wehrmacht headquarters, all telling the same story. The American M4 Sherman tank, the 2 and 1/2-ton deuce-and-a-half truck, the M1 Garand rifle. They are all the same, simple, rugged, reliable, and interchangeable. The German mechanics note with a creeping dread that every bolt on the Jeep is standard. Every component appears identical to every other Jeep. You could take 10 wrecked Jeeps and build 5 working ones from the parts. The Wehrmacht's own supply chain was a logistical nightmare. Dozens of different truck models from occupied France, Czechoslovakia, and Germany, each requiring its own unique parts. A broken Kubalwagen needed a Kubalwagen part. A broken Jeep just needed a Jeep part. Any Jeep part. This small, ugly truck represents an industrial philosophy that Germany cannot match. It's a philosophy of quantity, having a quality all its own. The men of the Africa Corps would come to love the Jeep. They captured dozens, then hundreds. They painted German crosses on them and prized them for reconnaissance, trusting their reliability more than their own machines. But for the mechanics who first saw it, the Jeep was an omen. It was the first shadow of an industrial colossus stirring in the West. They had seen the shadow, but they could not possibly comprehend the scale of the monster casting it. That education would come later. It would the POW education come, after May 13, 1943, when the entire Africa Corps surrendered in Tunisia, and these master mechanics became prisoners of war. The war in Africa is over for 250,000 German and Italian soldiers. For the mechanics, a new journey begins. It is an education in American power. The first lesson, logistics. They are moved from the front lines not by horse-drawn wagons, the standard for 80% of the German army, but be endless convoys of American trucks, GMC deuce and a halfs, thousands of them, all identical, all running. The second lesson, production. They are loaded onto ships at Oran, Algeria. They aren't passenger liners, they are Liberty ships. The Germans are told by their guards with casual American pride that these massive ocean-going vessels are built in American shipyards. Not in a year, not in 6 months, but in as little as 6 weeks. They cross the Atlantic and land in America, Norfolk, Virginia. They are put on trains and they ride for days through a country that shows no sign of war. A country where factories are still lit at night, where civilian cars still crowd the roads. They arrive at prison camps in the middle of the continent, places like Camp Hearn in the vast emptiness of Texas. And here, the education becomes personal. The American camp commanders have a problem. They are short on manpower. The war effort needs every able-bodied American. But these German prisoners, they are skilled, especially the mechanics. So the Africa Corps mechanics are put to work in the camp motor pool, maintaining the very vehicles that defeated them. This is the third and most devastating shock. In North Africa, a single German division might have a few hundred trucks if it was lucky. The motor pool at Camp Hearn, a simple prison camp, has dozens of jeeps, Dodge trucks, and command cars. And it's just one of hundreds of such camps. The German mechanics trained in the School of Perfection watch their American counterparts. They are young. Many are, as the Americans joke, farm boys. They're not master craftsmen. They are brutal. A part doesn't fit. They get a bigger hammer. An engine is too complex. They pull the whole thing out with a winch and drop a new one in. Their manuals are not complex engineering texts. They are, as one American surgeon explains, written for a 6th grade reading level full of pictures. The Germans are appalled. This isn't maintenance. It's butchery, but it works. The motor pool's operational readiness, the number of vehicles ready to run at any given time, is over 90%. In a German division, they were lucky to keep 50% of their vehicles running. Their reason is simple. The American sergeant points to the parts depot, a vast warehouse organized and full. Need a carburetor for that Jeep? He asked the German prisoner. I got 50. Need a new transmission? Got a dozen engine blows? I can have a new one from a depot in Dallas by tomorrow. The Germans realized the blueprint for rebuilding the truth. American maintenance isn't about preserving the vehicle. It's about using the vehicle. They treat these machines as disposable because for them they are. One German mechanic befriends an American guard who worked for Ford before the war. The guard tells him about a new factory his company built, a place called Willow Run. It's a mile long, the guard says. We build bombers. B-24 Liberators. The German mechanic knows these planes. They are the 4-engine monsters that bombed his supply lines. How many can you build? The German asks. 1, maybe 2 a day, the American laughs. At peak production, we were rolling 1 bomber off the line every 63 minutes. 1 every hour. The German mechanic does the math. 24 bombers a day, 700 a month from one factory. Germany's entire aircraft industry at its absolute peak struggled to match that. This is the war. Not the deserts of El Alamein, not the beaches of Sicily. This is the war. It's a war of mathematics, a war of production. And Germany, with its craftsman's ethos and its 50,000 Kubal wagons, never stood a chance against a nation that built 140,000 jeeps. During World War II, America produced over 2 million military vehicles. Germany, Italy, and Japan combined produced a fraction of that. The news of the D-Day landings in June 1944 comes as no surprise to the mechanics in Camp Hearn. They had seen the ships. They had seen the trucks. They had seen the jeeps. They knew the invasion wasn't a question of if, but when. And they knew it would be a wave of steel that nothing could stop. For these men, the war was already over. They had seen the enemy's ledger book, but their time in America was not just a prison sentence. It was an apprenticeship. They were learning a new way to think about machines, a new way to think about building. They didn't know it yet, But this education stolen from their enemies' motor pools would be the very thing that would one day rebuild their shattered nation. The war is over. The mechanic from the Africa Corps is repatriated, stepping off a ship into the port of Bremen. He is not returning to a country. He is returning to a graveyard. The cities are gone. Rubble is piled in mountains. There is no food, no work, no government. The Reich that was to last 1,000 years had destroyed itself in 12. But amid the destruction, he sees something familiar, something he saw in the desert, something he maintained in Texas. Jeeps, they are everywhere, driven by American, British, and French soldiers. They are the only things that can navigate the shattered streets. They are the circulatory system of the occupation. He needs work. He needs to eat. He walks Tone American Motor Pool, part of the occupation force. His English, learned in 3 years of captivity, is good. "Sir," he says to the American captain, "I am a vehicle mechanic. I was Africa Corps. I was a prisoner at Camp Hearn, Texas. I worked in your motor pool. I can fix these." The captain looks at his papers. He desperately needs mechanics. "You're hired." And so the German master mechanic finds himself employed by the army that defeated him, maintaining the vehicle that was the symbol of that defeat. But now he is not just a mechanic. He is a teacher. He begins training young Germans, many of them former child soldiers, in the American maintenance techniques. "No," he tells a student, "don't try to fix the single part. It's too slow. Replace the whole assembly. We have a dozen more. Simplicity, functionality, speed. That is the new way." He and thousands of other former prisoners returning from camps in America and Britain become missionaries. They carry a new industrial gospel. The old German way, precision, perfection, craftsmanship, was dead. It had built beautiful machines that couldn't win a war. The future was a hybrid. This is the secret of the Wirtswunder, the German economic miracle. It wasn't just the Marshall Plan, the flood of American money. It was the flood of American ideas carried in the heads of these returning prisoners. When German companies like Volkswagen were rebuilt, they were not rebuilt in the old way. They hired men like Ferdinand Porsche, yes, but they also hired the return mechanics and supply officers who had seen the American system. They built vehicles like the Volkswagen Type 181 thing. Look at it. It's not a Kubelwagen. It's a Jeep-like utility vehicle, but with a German accent. It was simple. It was reliable. It was designed for a farm boy to fix. Its parts were interchangeable, and it was designed from day one to be mass-produced. The German engineers applied their precision to the process. While the American philosophy dictated the product, they synthesized German quality with American manufacturability. The result was an economic renaissance that stunned the world. The Wehrmacht mechanics, they had learned their lesson. Years later, at reunions for Africa Corps veterans, the old men would gather. They would talk about Rammel, about Tobuk, about the heat and the flies, and inevitably they would talk about the Jeep. "I captured one in 42 point," one former officer would say. "Used it for 3 months. Best vehicle I ever drove. Better than anything we had." Another, a former mechanic, would not. "I realized then in Tunisia that we'd been approaching it all wrong. Too complicated, too difficult to produce. They made 640,000 of them. We made 50,000 Kubelwagens. That ratio, that was the war. Even the high command admitted it." U.S. Army historian Hugh Cole, who interviewed defeated German generals, reported they admired the Jeep more than any other piece of American equipment. Not the B-7, not the Sherman, the simple Jeep. General George C. Marshall, the architect of the American victory, called it America's greatest contribution to modern warfare. It was a perfect symbol. It was a weapon of war that was fundamentally a tool of production. It was an education delivered to the enemy on the battlefield. The Wehrmacht mechanics, humbled by defeat, proved to be excellent students. They saw the Jeep, and in it they saw the future. They admitted with the painful clarity of hindsight, "We never had vehicles like it." It wasn't just an admission of a superior machine. It was the admission of a superior idea. An idea that defeated their nation and then, in the most profound irony of the 20th century, gave them the tools to rebuild it.